which is ridiculous. It's like making a U-turn. Fine, 50 bucks. We need to increase the penalties and change the definition to protect our animals. That's why I've introduced the PAWS Act, protect animals while walking, and ensure that they're treated equally as when a human being is hit by a hit and run car. I want to first, before I go into the bill and introduce my colleagues and my great co-sponsor of the bill, State Senator Andrew Gounardes from Brooklyn. I want to thank the Good Day Foundation for being here today to announce the PAWS Act. I want to thank Richard and Darcy and his dog Jason and Lilo, Ashley and Toby, Karen and Charlotte of Chelsea. She has a big following on Instagram. I also want to thank Adira from my office who has Monster here, who's wearing a new tie. And the funny thing is, Monster is definitely not a monster. It's the chillest dog you've ever met. Unfortunately, my dog Radar could not be here. He's not feeling well right now, and he's a little aggressive, so we left him at home. So the dogs that join us today from Good Day are all support animals and therapy dogs. They do such important work and deserve to be protected. We've heard a lot about pets in the news lately, like I said before, but here we don't lie about our pets. Here we protect them. In New York, we know how important our pets are, which is why we're actually taking action to protect them from the real dangers of traffic violence, not imagined ones. There is certain presidential candidates like to make lies up about our fellow Americans. And here, we're actually trying to protect our service dogs. All these dogs who cross the street on the way here, God forbid, if they were hit by a car, the penalty for killing one of these beautiful animals would be as low as 50 bucks. Now, the minimum fine will be $250 and up if you break the law and you do not protect our animals, our four-legged family friends. I want to now pass it on to my co-sponsor, the great State Senator Andrew Gounardes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony. Good morning, everyone. I'm State Senator Gounardes from Brooklyn. Senator Hallman allowed me to come into Manhattan today. I cleared it in advance.
Only for an hour.
Only for an hour. And they're going to check the timestamp on the way out just to make sure. I'm really excited to be introducing this bill with Councilmember Simone because we know that our streets are dangerous. Our streets are dangerous for pedestrians, they're dangerous for cyclists, they're dangerous for parents trying to push strollers, for seniors trying to get across the street, and they're dangerous for our companion friends as well. And we often we don't do enough to protect people on our streets from road violence, and we certainly don't do enough to protect our four-legged friends as well. And the harm caused to them is just as great as if it would happen to a child, a senior, a parent, an adult. And it should be a lot more than just a 50-buck crime. That speaks volumes about what we think about pets and dogs and companion animals and how important they are in our society. But we know that they actually are much more important than that. And so the Protecting Animals While Crossing the Street Act, the PAWS Act, will increase the penalties for those individuals who hit and injure or kill a pet, a dog, or if they flee the scene of doing the same. This became really an issue in my district where I first learned about this when it happened in my own district just over the summer, where a local reporter unfortunately had her dog hit and killed by a car who then drove off to face no consequences. And even if that driver was caught, it would be just 50 bucks. 50 bucks will never replace the loss of a child, and it certainly can't replace the loss of a cherished member of your family who just happens to be a pet as well. And so that's why we think that this is really important to do, and to raise more attention and awareness that no matter who is crossing the street, whether it's a parent pushing a stroller, a senior, or someone walking their dog, you have to be treated the same. You have to drive on the streets with the same level of utmost care, and you have a responsibility, no matter who is crossing the street in front of you, to allow them to cross safely. And if you don't, we're going to penalize you for it. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, all the way from Brooklyn. I lived there for like a minute. And now I need to introduce my great colleague, Assemblymember Harvey Epson. I know you have somewhere to run, who owns a big dog. I forgot the breed of your dog.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Andrew, for doing this. As a dog lover in my family, my dog's Homer. I mean, the idea of losing a family member, a child, a pet is just, horrific. Recently a friend lost their dog to a traffic crash, and that's traumatic. And the idea that this happened and there's no penalty, parking ticket's more than $50. just because you woke up late for all inside. The idea of killing an animal without consequences really is unbelievable. I really want to applaud the two of you for saying this is a priority for us, that we need to protect our loved ones, whether they're human beings or they're animal, and to ensure that people have to pay consequences when they do something wrong. And that's exactly what it is doing, saying there are consequences here. If you injure or maim or kill an animal, it should be more than just a slap on the wrist, and that's what it is today. So let's hope and get this bill passed next year, let the governor sign it, and make sure we protect our family. Thank you both.
Thank you, Harvey. And one important member of our four-legged family I forgot to introduce is Rebecca Lewis's dog, Ivy, from City and State. I heard she got a promotion to editor, right?
Oh yeah.
We often see her in the halls of Albany. And now I want to introduce my amazing colleague from our district, State Senator Brad Harlan-Siegel.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Thank you, Senator. Welcome, Chelsea.
You.
Come back and visit sometime. Sure. But not too frequently. Just kidding. State Senator Brad Harlan-Siegel represents this amazing neighborhood, this great park, among other things, from Christopher Street up to West 103rd. You know, it's good to be talking about PAWS unrelated to congestion pricing. I just got to say that. Because we know that traffic violence impacts families to an enormous degree. And dogs and service animals are members of our families. And we regard them with love and affection, and we want them protected by our laws. And the current state of affairs doesn't do that. So I'm very grateful to Assemblymember Simone and Senator Gounardes for this common sense legislation to increase the penalties if a dog or other pet is killed by traffic violence. We have to ensure that drivers know that there are consequences for their reckless acts, and the PAWS Act will make that clear. So thank you again. Thank you to my neighbors for being here, and let's make certain that we get this bill signed. We end traffic violence for everyone, including our pets. Thank you, Assemblyman.
Thank you, Brad. It's the one pause that we actually like. And now I'd like to introduce Councilmember Eric Bonner, who I've actually tried to convince to own a dog, right?
Yeah,
If you need a friend, let's go.
it'll be a while before that happens. Hi everyone, this is Lilu, who I just got to meet a few minutes ago, and we want to thank Assemblymember Tony Simone and Senator Andrew Gounardes for introducing this important legislation today. I didn't know until yesterday that the penalty for killing a pet with a motor vehicle after breaking the law is less than a parking ticket. That's not right. These wonderful sentient beings are members of our family, and I can't imagine how painful it would be if a member of my family was killed by a motor vehicle that was making a illegal U-turn or running a red light, and they got slapped with a $50 fine. That's not right, and that's why we're here, and that's why Assemblymember Simone and Senator Gounardes are taking action by raising that penalty to $250, which is far less than the price of a life of one of these wonderful beings. But it's a step in the right direction because this law has been inadequate, and the story of how this came to be with the reporter in Brooklyn having lost her pet, the driver takes off, and if that driver was ever found, they would have gotten a $50 fine. That's wrong. So this is a correction that's being made in the law on behalf of all the pets out there, and thank you very much.
I don't want to drop the loop. My dog Raider is going to get jealous. But I now want to introduce our Guide Dog Federation volunteer, Jason.
Yes.
I'll hold Lilu while you tell us the importance.
So Lilu is 4 years old. I've had her since she was 3 months old. But for the last year and a half about, she's been a therapy pet. We go to Mount Sinai Morningside's child psych ward every week, and she cheers up the kids, a lot of whom are depressed, and she really brightens up their day. And we go to Columbia Med School, and she cheers up the stressed out med students. And yeah, she's just the friendliest, most playful dog with all other dogs and all people, and she just loves attention. But yeah, she's great, and she's very important to me. And as everyone has been saying, if something were to happen to her and all the consequence that person faced was $50, yeah, that wouldn't be right. So I really appreciate this bill.
Thank you, everyone. Now, the dogs will take questions, only easy questions.
If I could just pick up from actually one of your comments there about service dogs, and so this law will apply equally to all pets that are identified as pets, not just service dogs or therapy dogs, correct?
Yes.
And I'd also like to ask, how big of a problem is this? Is there any data on how many times, roughly a year, that this has happened?
We can get you the exact numbers, but we often have constituents complaining about cars blocking the box. Where I live on 37th and 10th, often folks are picking up their dogs because they're afraid that cars are speeding through the lights. And unfortunately, that's a big problem. And we've actually had an incident once where someone said their dog was almost hit. And we found out that the fine was so ridiculously low, we want to make it equivalent to if a pedestrian is hit by a car, since they're part of our families.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does this apply to people like on motorbikes and scooters? Because they're the ones who are talking about the Wild West, who are zipping through and not obeying any of the law, of the traffic laws.
Any vehicular traffic.
The fine is imposed for a driver who hits the pet, or must it be that they hit the pet and then leave the scene?
No, even if they just hit them.
So even if the motorist hits the pet.
Because right now, if say I was walking with radar, God forbid, and a motorist hit radar, the fine is $50. It's like when you make a illegal U-turn.
It's my understanding that the law was pretty outdated, prior to this bill. Could you just go into what the language says and why that might be unique?
I'm going to hand it over to the guru.
Sure. So, just take a quick step back. So, what we're doing in effect with this law, with this proposal, is to add the term companion animal, meaning any domesticated animal, which includes and which is considered a pet, to the same duty of care section of the vehicle and traffic law that currently exists. It's section 1146. That section of law imposes a duty of care in the vehicle and traffic law for domestic animals, which is defined as domesticated sheep, cattle, and goats, being accompanied by a shepherd, goat herder, but does not include a companion animal. So the law right now actually has protections for sheep and goats, which I don't think we have any, maybe up at Riverside Park. Right?
No, they just left.
Wrong time of the year. Yeah, wrong time. They just left. But it does not cover companion animals or pets. And so we are not taking away from the sheep or the goats, but we are updating the statute, which clearly has not been updated in a very long time, based on this definition, to reflect that drivers now have a duty of care as it relates to when they're on the road and their responsibility vis-a-vis a pet on the street. And we are increasing the fines, as some members said, from $50, it goes up to $250. And then if someone flees the scene after hitting or killing a pet, currently the penalty is $100, and this bill would increase it up to $500 for a first-time offense. And if you're caught a second time fleeing the scene, it would go up to $750 for fleeing after hitting or killing a pet. Is that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I love the sheep and the goats.
How did you
We
land?
love our dogs too.
How did you land on 250? Is there? How did you land on the 250 fine? How did you get those numbers?
Yeah, I think it's a general consensus that that's an appropriate number. We are very mindful about the use of using purely financial means to penalize people who have driving violations or other types of infractions. It is a big concern. But so 250 seems like a reasonable amount that would still act as a deterrent, but not be a strong financial penalty for those who might not be able to afford that readily. Hopefully it never has to be paid, obviously. And that seems to strike the right balance. And this is reflective of many other conversations we've had in other contexts around automated traffic enforcement and other parts of our VTL law where we have been trying to increase the accountability through enforcement and what the right balance there is.
What if it was purely an accident? It wasn't a U-turn, it wasn't somebody making an illegal right-hand turn. What if it was just purely an accident, or the dog ran in front of the car, or what if there was really no fault to the driver?
So this is not
or
a
the
strict,
scooter
this is not a strict liability offense. This is part of the duty of care standard. So you have a duty of care to exercise reasonable judgment when someone is crossing the street in front of you with or without a pet. And if it's found that you have violated that duty of care, just I'm a parent, I push a stroller every day. If someone took a quick turn, right, when I was pushing the stroller across the street and they did not exercise that duty of care, they would be liable in that case. There's no accident there if they see us walking across the street. Similarly, if I have a leash and a dog and I'm crossing the street and a car takes a fast turn, they're not exercising the duty of care there, so they would be liable in that case. All of these cases, however, end up going for prosecution at the local district attorney's offices. There is no strict liability here or automatic. We don't have an automatic enforcement system for this infraction or this part of the VTL, and so the circumstance you're suggesting would never actually come to be.
So if you had an issue with it, you'd go to court.
We'd have to be charged, and this is another big issue that we've been trying to work on. And I have a bill with Senator Hoylman on this for a long time. How do we actually make it easier to prosecute really reckless drivers through the criminal justice system? Because right now, not to get us too far off topic, but right now it is incredibly difficult for a district attorney to prosecute a reckless driver who ends up seriously injuring or killing someone because of the way our laws have been interpreted over many years in the court. There's something called the Rule of Two, which requires a showing that at least 2 traffic laws were broken in the act of injuring or killing someone with a motor vehicle, which means if I was speeding between 70th Street and 71st Street and I hit someone in the middle of that street, I was only caught speeding, I likely would not be liable because I didn't break a traffic law, 2 traffic laws. But if I ran the light on 71st Street and hit someone on 72nd Street, starting from 70th Street, well then I was caught speeding and I was caught breaking a traffic control device. I now satisfy the Rule of Two, and now you can hold me liable for killing someone with a vehicle, but not in the first circumstance. So Senator Hoylman and I have a bill for several years now that we've been trying to do to address the lack of accountability in terms of how we can prosecute these motor vehicle crimes, which is a whole separate conversation. But for right here, right now, we think it's important to impose this duty of care standard on drivers as it relates to our 4-legged friends.
Do you find that many of these cases, the dogs are leashed or unleashed? I know it probably varies by...
I think it varies.
Yeah.
I think it varies.
Would that have any impact on
all of these are case by case, really depending on case by case circumstances, right? If the driver again has a duty of care, the driver has the responsibility to operate the motor vehicle safely and reflective of that duty of care. All of those determinations are done on a case-by-case basis. There might be a circumstance where a driver is not found liable, but the default here is that they do have that responsibility. Similarly, in the district I used to represent, we lost a 5-year-old boy who was crossing the street 20 feet ahead of his parents because he was so excited to cross the street, and a driver came and mowed him right over. Now you can argue who was liable. He was on his scooter. Who was liable? Was it the driver? Was it the kid? Was it the parents? The kid's not on a leash. The boy was not on a leash. He was not in a stroller, but he was pushing a stroller. He was pushing a scooter, and his life was taken by a car which plowed right through a stop sign. Right. So imagine that the pain of that circumstance. Now instead of it being a 5-year-old boy, now it's one of our friends here. Right. Same type of loss, same type of trauma. The law should be updated to reflect that as well.
You said that the fine goes up for repeat offenders. Is there any situation where someone's license would be taken away if they hit enough dogs?
Looking right here, we do. Yes, there is a. If serious physical injury does result, the fine could be worth up to $750 on a repeat offense, and/or a 15-day imprisonment. which is the current law as it applies to hitting an individual, by the way, or require participation in a motor vehicle accident prevention course or license or registration suspension. So that's the same enforcement scheme that exists for hitting a person, and by introducing the companion animal into this section of the VTL law, potentially a truly reckless driver could fall within that. But I can tell you anecdotally, just based on my experience, spending a lot of time thinking about traffic enforcement, it is very rare, almost never happens, where a driver will have their license or vehicle registration suspended, even on multiple infractions. It is incredibly high bar to meet, and it is a very rare occurrence.
And is there any instance where the pet owner could be liable for the fine if they were found to be negligible in the incident?
No, because that's not what the VTL has. Like, we don't make a parent or an adult liable if they get hit by a car right now. So there's no change in the standard here. All we are doing is we're taking the existing standard that applies for a driver as they have to treat people on the roadway in front of them, pedestrians, cyclists, etc., and we are including in that broad duty of care companion animals, including pets, just as sheep and goat are also currently included in that antiquated section of law.